So to start off, the most important thing is ensuring that your devices are on the most up-to-date firmware and everything is all running in the correct firmware version. So the latest version we have right now is from December 6th, and these are some of the versions. Now this feature is also supported on the M300 and the RC Plus now. These are just some release notes from the newest version. So kind of like an introduction of how the LiDAR is used in the electricity industry is essentially it's generating point clouds. It's inspecting transmission and distribution lines. So those are the two assets you're kind of inspecting with this LiDAR. So you're able to essentially complete a vegetation analysis and also plan for future inspections routes. So in the past, previously, when doing this type of LiDAR inspection, you would have to know the exact measurements and height of the assets. With this power line follow feature, essentially the drone will follow the power lines automatically. So you guys can see this is kind of how it looks like. We got point cloud scanning, some vegetation analysis, and then inspection route planning. So this is kind of how the workflow worked before the Powerline follow feature. You would obviously need a controller, make sure everything's good to go with the device and firmware. And then with the aircraft, you could use pinpoints, route planning. You'd have to ensure all your payload settings were correct for that specific mission. Parameter settings are all correct. And then also you make sure you do your pre-flight checks, flight operation, and then also generate a quality report and then put it in a DJI Terra for post-processing. With the new Powerline follow, we've kind of eliminated some of that work. Now you still need the controller, but you can immediately just jump right into it and use the L2 Powerline follow feature to essentially identify the power line. You can adjust the parameter settings, the altitude, or whatever you need for that specific mission, and you can select the power line. So if there's more than one power line, you're able to select which one you want to inspect. And then it's obviously autonomous now because it can follow the power line. And at the end, you would still process it in DJI Terra. So with this new power line follow feature on the L2, some things it can do is wire recognition. So without wire channels or any different branch lines, it can identify that and you can choose which way you'd want it to go. So if it branches out to the left, to the right, you're able to select which one you want to inspect. And then also now it's automated, so it can follow the power line according to whatever parameters you have set previously and collect LiDAR data. And then on top of that too, you're able to see the point cloud while it's being generated live on the controller. So you can get a visual and you can also get a point cloud visualization. So kind of the workflow, how we would recommend doing it is in preparation, we would recommend having a CSM radar on top. So that's an attachment on top of the M350. And then in the Pilot 2 app, we would want to make sure that our obstacle avoidance 10 meters, and then ensure that you have a good, strong RTK signal and you're on the flight mode N. And then in the parameter settings, essentially what you would do is you'd fly above the power lines, and then you would switch to the visual camera of the L2 and make sure you put the gimbal down as you'll be flying over the power lines and you want your gimbal down capturing the data. And then you can hover over what you're looking for and you would click the power line follow icon right there on your L2 on the controller. And then from there it would populate settings. So from here you would select which one you're inspecting. So if you're inspecting distribution lines, you would inspect distribution or transmission. And then all the way at the top, you can name, for example, if you know the power line that you're inspecting, say it's East S123, you're able to put that on there and it'll save it for you. And then on top of that, you could choose your speed. So you're going to ask me at the end, what are some of these recommended parameters? At the end, I have some slides kind of recommending what speed and altitude to fly in. But for now, you can kind of just see what the parameters are that are adjustable. So speed is an option, altitude, and then pitch. You can select between -90 to -70, even though default is -70. And then you can also have IMU calibration selected when enabled. It essentially will calibrate your IMU for you before your inspection and when your inspection ends. So automatically doing that for you is really convenient. And then also you can enable RGB coloring to add that to your point cloud, and then some other parameters at the end. So recommended parameters, depending on if you're doing a distribution or a transmission, we got different speeds and altitudes, but overall, the most important is we recommend triple return mode, 240 for sample hertz, and RGB coloring to add that coloring to that point cloud at the end, and then non-repetitive for power lines. So then after that, once your power line is selected, you would ensure, as you can see right here, we only see one power line right here, one. So you would select that, and then you can click begin following, and essentially the drone will start following the power lines. None of the stick control will work while it's on its flight. And in order to get out of that, you can either switch flight modes, or you can click the orange button on the controller, which has a pause logo on it, and it will stop. We recommend while this is happening, instead of just staring at that screen right there, you can switch to your FPV camera and essentially see if there's anything in front of you, since your main payload will be looking down. So that's kind of how it would look like while a mission is happening. So once you get to a power line junction selection, for example, right here, you're flying, you have two routes. You can either go straight or venture to the left. You would have the option to tap 4 or 9 and click C1, and it would from there go whatever junction you selected. And then at the end, basically you could pause your mission, or if any of these scenarios were to happen, essentially if the end of the power line, like there's no more to go, it will automatically stop and drop a pin. Or let's say there's an unrecognized power line, it will also stop. Or if you push the emergency stop button, it will stop. Switching the flight mode will also stop it. You can also low battery, return to home will also stop the feature, and also pressing the return home button or RC signal loss. So these are some scenarios that will cause the power line follow feature to stop. A good keynote to put in there is if it ends or interrupted, a pinpoint will be created so that you can start from there in the future or resume. So some FAQs for this L2 power line follow feature. What do we recommend for flight safety? We recommend using the CSM radar, also that FPV, utilizing that FPV camera already on that drone while it's going on. And then these are some recommended parameters depending on what you're inspecting, giving you some speed, altitude, and gimbal pitch. And then what kind of situations are hard for the L2? The one that comes to my mind is always the substations are hard too. And if the towers are smaller towers, less than 7 meters, that's going to be difficult for it to follow. And then any line-shaped objects near the power lines from a bird's eye view, such as buildings, streetlights, or billboards. So that kind of concludes the presentation.